Hey YouTube, coming at you with a video on whether Shadow Pokemon are better or worse in the Ultra League. So I did this for Great League, and my Great League analysis showed basically two things. I'd say for like 90% of the matchups, it did not matter whether you use Shadow or non-Shadow. So for example, Gligar, Swampert, um, a few others, it was basically like you pick up some wins and you pick up some losses. So for the most part, it didn't matter. There's two types of Pokemon that it did matter for. That does not surprise me. The first is the Pokemon that you rely on their fast move damage. So counter users like Shadow Machamp and like Shadow Charmers like Shadow Gramble and stuff like that, where the fast move damage is what you're doing in the one shield anyways most of the time. So those Pokemon not surprising. And the second one is Pokemon where if they're if the extra damage they're putting out makes it so it's only two fast moves, but they do not take one. It doesn't take one move back. So what ended up happening? So again, I'll just give you an example because that sounds kind of confusing. Shadow Bomb Snow. For the most part, you're not going to one-shot a Shadow Bomb Snow even with the Shadow. I mean, if it's super effective Blast Burn and stuff like that, sure. But for the most part, neutral moves will not one-shot a. Sorry, that's my kid's monitor. If you hear that beeping, one move will not one shot a bomb of snow, but for even a shadow. But now, because that you have that shadow bonuses, what would have been like 3 weather balls before are now 2 weather balls before. So now shut up bomb snow is much better because you still take sort of the same amount of damage to take you out, but you're hitting much harder. That is, you're taking them out quicker, if that makes sort of sense there. So Ultra League, doesn't matter for Ultra League. So I'm actually just looking at this at the same time as you. So we're going to kind of go through this together. I have my thoughts on this. And before we get into this, let's just see if my thoughts are right. My thoughts are, for the most part, Ultra League is going to be a little trickier than Great League. I think probably Machamp, let's just start with Machamp because I think Shadow Machamp is going to make a huge difference. Yeah. So Shadow Machamp, if you've been along this channel for a while, so I always say Shadow Machamp doesn't care about your typing. And that's basically it with Shadow Machamp. Like, that counter damage is just so oppressive. Even in like bad matchups, it's just super strong. So it does not, and I'll throw it in the matrix here, but it does not surprise me. It's running with Payback, which I think you don't, it's not a must in the Great League, in the Ultra League, but just with so many like Ghosts and Giratina and stuff, I think it is. So on paper, you actually lose. Let's actually maximize IVs. So on paper, it's actually even. You pick up 2 Muck and Swampert, but you lose Cofagrigus, Gliscor, and Shadow Swampert. But am I going crazy here? Why does it say you? Oh, sorry. Duh. Right. The Shadow Machamp has one more win than the regular Machamp. Sorry, I just read this wrong. The regular Machamp wins 2 more that the Shadow Machamp doesn't win. The Muck and the Swampert, but it loses Cofagrigus, Gliscor, Swampert. So that's the trade-off. So one more win for Shadow Machamp, but it's not just that. It's that rating, and it's a significant jump in rating. And so what it basically means is the ones you're winning by usually much more. Like, you can just look at the Walrein there, just like how strong you are there. And some of the ones that you're losing, like the Poliwrath and stuff like that, and Pidgeot matchups that you're going to lose anyways, you're just now, the counter damage and cross chops are just doing so much damage that you're going to pick up a way better rating. So stuff like Shadow Machamp, Shadow Machamp doesn't care about your typings. That is basically where this story lies. Like, yes, if you have a Shadow Machamp, it is significantly better than a regular Machamp. So that's that. Let me just type in Shadow here to see if there's any. I have to actually. So I'll go through each of these Pokemon individually. Dragonite's probably the only one there I run because it's got the exact same. Yeah, it's got the exact same outcome, right? Your Dragon Breath damage is where the majority of the damage is going to do, right? So there you have a Dragonite at 33, Shadow Dragonite at 33, regular at 69. Nice. So we will shadow this. We will go regular. And not surprising to me is that your Shadow Dragonite should pick up much more wins. So yeah, regular Dragonite picks up 3 more wins, but it loses 6 more. And so a 3 higher win overall and then a higher overall average, which is not surprising. And it just comes down to that fast move damage being super like OP, right? And that's same thing with that. So in conclusion, if it comes down to that, for the most part it matters. And I know Poliwrath is not the same, so I'm gonna have to just look at that in 1 second. I'm seeing if there's any other like fast move where it's just like, oh yeah, you definitely need the fast move here. I'm guessing Nidoqueen, because Nidoqueen just kind of relies on the, oh no, only 10 difference here, so that's not actually significant. I was gonna say Nidoqueen because Nidoqueen relies on the poison jab, but maybe not so much anymore since they nerfed Poison Fang. I think it probably made more of a difference when Poison Fang wasn't nerfed, because then your poison jabs were actually doing more damage. But because it actually takes longer to get to, yeah, you actually lose 2 more now with the Shadow, and your average is actually worse. So even though you're higher ranked, you're actually worse. So there's actually a ton of trade-offs between the actually quite a lot of trade-offs between this. So I what it comes down to is basically which Pokemon do you want to beat? Because it looks like the regular Nidoqueen picks up a few here and then loses to a few there. Interesting. So it's just kind of not random, but just depends on what you want to go into here. I use Shadow Nidoqueen, but ever since they nerfed it, it just you really feel that Poison Fang nerf. So otherwise, let's go into some of these other Shadow Pokemon. Steelix is the first one. So I'm using a regular Steelix. It's rank 2, and a Shadow Steelix is rank 5. I don't think there is a ton of difference, in my opinion, given how tanky it is. So if you run here, so the Shadow is worse. So actually the Shadow is much worse. You pick up 1 win, but you lose 4 more and have a lower, yeah, so you do lose 4 and things. So I guess what it comes down to why the regular is better is because you don't really see its strength in Steelix until you like breaking swipe like once or twice. So basically what this is going to say here is Empoleon going to hit super effective with the water. You lose to Sylveon, really? I guess Sylveon needs to land an Earthquake. But like Powder Snow, Icicle Spear is going to come fast. Shadow Claw is going to come fast and hit hard. Hex and Surf comes fast. So basically what happens is with that Shadow, you're not able to lower their attack fast enough that those super effective moves, Liquidation, Surf, Water Gun, are going to add up faster on the Shadow Steelix. Whereas on the regular Steelix, they're not going to, those moves at the beginning are not going to add up a ton. And then you're going to start lowering their attacks like once or twice. And then when you start getting to like the 3rd breaking swipe on Jealous and stuff like that, your damage isn't as low as it would be on the Shadow Steelix. So now when you're taking that 3rd times lowered Surf, it's not really causing as big of a dent. So basically the Shadow Steelix suffers from its ability to take these moves early on. So that's why Shadow Steelix is slightly worse. I run a regular Steelix, and I think regular Steelix is probably the way to go. If you built up a Shadow Steelix, I don't think it's substantially worse. Just know that you will, the moves that you take at the beginning are going to hurt a bit more, which could cause you problems in the end game there. So that is Shadow Steelix, and that's why Steelix is high. Registeel at 1 and 8. I think basically what this is going to show is probably very similar to what it showed in the Great League, and that is because your fast move does absolutely nothing, the extra damage that you're picking up is not worth it. Okay, so yeah, it does. There's almost no difference here. Shadow Steelix picks up 2 more and loses 2 more. Slightly lower average, right? So even record, but slightly lower average. And basically what that is coming down to is, like, I'll give the perfect example in the Trevenant matchup, just to give you, just to explain it. So what is happening is your fast move damage is doing nothing, right? You have lock on. So really you're only doing more damage with your charge move. For most of these charge moves, having the Shadow is not going to like one-shot stuff. You're still mostly going to need two moves in Zap Cannon or Focus Blast. Clearly it does flip a couple. Like you can now probably one-shot Scrafty with Focus Blast, and you probably now one-shot Poliwrath with that. But what's happening in this sort of Trevenant matchup is these claws are similar to the Steelix, are adding up much, much faster on the Registeel, and you still are going to, like, you're still going to need multiple moves to take this out. So basically what you're doing is just taking much, much more damage for not really flipping the matchups in terms of like your fast move, your charge move. So that was the same analysis in Great League, is that you're basically just taking more damage with the Shadow, but not getting those one shots. You still need 2 moves. So if you're going to need 2 moves anyways, don't just take that extra damage unnecessarily, is basically what that is saying. So that is Steelix. That is Registeel. Swampert. So Swampert, 11 and 17. It's probably going to be very similar to... it's probably going to be similar to Great League, where you're going to pick up some and you're going to lose some. And overall, it's going to be pretty much a wash, is my guess. I like Shadow better, even though the analysis actually says that regular is much better. You're picking up many more matchups with the regular. You're picking up 4 matchups. Which one ranked higher? The Shadow is ranked higher. The Shadow's ranked higher. You have a better record with the regular and a better overall average with the regular. You pick up Cofagrigus, Giratina, Machamp, Shadow Machamp, Scrafty, Toxicroak, Walrein, and you lose Escav and Greninja, which are just sort of like whatever anyways. So what I think it comes down to is Shadow Swampert is, again, hits like a truck, but it's glassy. And I think what's happening here in your Giratina, Cofagrigus, I think there's 2 things in these wins that I'm seeing down here. Cofagrigus, Giratina, Walrein are all pretty tanky, but all hit decent. I mean, Giratina doesn't hit hard, but it hits a lot. And Cofagrigus hits pretty hard, and Walrein hits pretty hard. So what I think happens here is with the Shadow, you're just taking that extra damage, but because they're so tanky, that extra Shadow bonus is not like taking them out. Like for Walrein, you're still going to need regular Walrein, probably an Earthquake, and maybe 1 Hydro. But with this one, it looks like you just take multiple Icicle Spears that you could otherwise not take with the regular. So it's probably like the Shadow in here, it's probably like you get taken out in 2 Icicle Spears as opposed to probably needing 3 for the other one, right? So 1, 2. That's not surprising. So you get taken out in 2 Icicle Spears here. Whereas I'm posted to this one, they will need 3 Icicle Spears. Let's just take off the Earthquake. I don't know why they would go Earthquake there. But yeah, they would need 3 Icicle Spears, and you land 2 Earthquakes. Again, it is very bait dependent, so keep that in mind, but that is basically what's happening with that matchup. I guess I should make sure that it's actually on the screen, because I'm going off my internet here, and it's going on there. And this other one, the Machamp, Scrafty, and Toxicroak, basically this is where just the fast move damage is doing most of the work, right? Machamp, Scrafty, and Toxicroak as counter users. It's the same in Great League when it comes to Metachamp. If you have a Shadow Swampert against Metachamp, Shadow Swampert, regular Swampert is going to take out Metachamp with 2 Hydros. And it's the same with the Shadow, but the extra counter damage just adds up on the Shadow Swampert. And it's the exact same thing here. The extra counter damage from Scrafty, Machamp, and Toxicroak are basically going to outweigh the extra hit damage that you get, because you're not going to one-shot a Toxicroak. I mean, you one-shot with an Earthquake, but you won't one-shot it with a Hydro. You won't one-shot Machamp with a Hydro. So you still need probably a second move, but now the counter damage is adding up too much. So that is what is happening there. So I guess even though it's higher ranked, Shadow Swamp, like regular Swampert, is better on paper. Again, I don't think there's too much of an issue, just because I use Shadows. I've used both. I just like the extra damage that you get with that Shadow Swampert in sort of neutral situations. Again, this is just on paper, and this is what you need to consider when you're running these Pokemon. This is just an analysis on paper. What it's not showing is, let's say I have a great matchup within this. Again, you have great matchups here, Shadow Swampert and Swampert against like Amok with Poison Jab. What this isn't showing is, if I play it properly, I'm going to come out with like a move and a half, 2 moves. If I come out with 2 moves on a regular Swampert, it's like, okay, Hydro's going to hurt. If I come out with 2 moves on Shadow Swampert, you're like, ah, crap, I'm going to really have to think about what I'm going to do here. So what this analysis doesn't show is, in the good matchups that you take, if you come out with energy, your Shadow Swampert is going to actually be a little more scarier than a regular Swampert. All in all, though, I don't think you need to build up one or the other. I do like using the regular. Regirock, it's again, I don't need to do this analysis. You're seeing that the regular is higher. It's the exact same analysis as a Registeel. Your fast move damage does nothing. Your Stone Edge or Focus Blast is not going to one-shot anything with the Shadow. Or maybe like one or two things, but it doesn't make up for the damage that you're taking. So Reggie's not something you need to worry about shadows for. Poliwrath, this was surprising to me. Poliwrath Shadow and Poliwrath Regular are right below each other. And my question was like, why is it different for Poliwrath? When it's a counter user, and it should theoretically play the same as your Machamp and your Dragonite where you're doing fast move damage here. But on paper, 3 and 3 difference with basically even averages. So overall, it's true. You pick up Charizard, Gyarados, and Registeel, but you lose Mandibuzz, Nidoqueen, A9. Even averages, right? So it just looks like that extra counter damage that you're getting with it, although it flips some matchups, will flip some matchups the other way, and the rest of them are just basically you win, you lose, and there's not much difference in the other matchups, like some a little bit of worse here. A little bit better on the regular here, a little bit better on the Shadow here and here. Like it just seems to be a wash. So Poliwrath, that actually surprised me when I looked at this earlier. Poliwrath was one of them I looked at. I was like, that's interesting. So yeah, Poliwrath does not seem to matter. Gliscor 22 and 28. I mean, Gligar in Great League basically says you win some, you lose some, and I'm guessing that is basically what Ultra League Gliscor is going to do, because it's basically sort of the same thing, right? You're a little tankier here. So 4 more losses. So 3 flips. Plus a slightly better average. So Shadow is slightly better. I thought that Shadow may be slightly better just because it's one of those things where it's like, if I have a regular Gliscor, an Earthquake's going to hurt, but it's like, okay. But if I have a Shadow Gliscor, it's just like, oof, this is going to really chip you, that it's going to threaten, like people will be a little scared of that Earthquake. So that's why, and plus like the wing attack damage from the Shadow, I think would be, but again, everything's so bulky in Ultra League. But so yes, on paper, Shadow is better overall. That would be my guess as well. Again, I don't think it's like game changing if you want to use Gliscor. I don't think it's like, oh, I'm building up a regular one. It could be so much worse. I don't think that's like a huge issue, but just be aware that on paper it is worse, even though overall it's just sort of whatever. Shadow Dragonite I talked about. A9 with Powder Snow. I built up both, and the Shadow seems to be way higher ranked here. And I think what it's going to come down to is very similar to what I said. Actually, I didn't even talk about Walrein, but I'm guessing Walrein is going to be the same. So we're going to check out Walrein immediately after this, because I've used Walrein as a Shadow and non-Shadow, and I've used Ninetales as a Shadow and non-Shadow. And because the Weather Ball comes so quickly, interesting. Oh wait, maximum stat product. Yeah, that's maximum stat product. The regular is interesting. Let me do the same thing with Walrein, because Walrein, I feel like Shadow is better on Walrein, just having used it. But let me just run this and see if there's actually a difference here. No, this one actually saying the regular Walrein is... Oh wait, let me... Stat product here. Slightly better, but not significantly. Interesting. So the Walrein is showing that there's not a ton of difference, but A9 is showing a significant difference. And so let me see what you pick up. And the regular, you pick up Buzzhole, Coffer Gregus, Drapion, Double, Greedent, A9 mirror match, so that's not true. That's just a wash. Pidgeot, oh, that's with Psyshock instead of a Dazzling Gleam. Okay, that's sort of random. Pidgeot, Swampert, Venusaur, but you lose Cress, Swampert, and Snorlax. So I guess it comes down to the Shadow is just that much worse for the overall stat product here. So what's your stat product? I think 148, 174, 161 with a 4100 overall. So it's what just confused me, why I'm actually just like flabbergasted is because of this rating. You have I think I know why this rating is the way it is. But on paper, like when you look at, if you go to these again, take it with a grain of salt, but just for those of you who use this as a resource, why is this showing a Ninetales at 40 Shadow, regular Ninetales at 84, when on paper, clearly regular Ninetales is way better? And what I think it comes down to is that this is done against, heavily weighted against the top Pokemon. So where Shadow may be better is against sort of these top ranked Pokemon here. So let's look at like sort of the Shadow wins here, right? Your Shadow beats regular Swampert, although it loses to the Shadow one, so that's sort of a wash, but it picks up that one. Trying to see what other top ranked Pokemon are here that, like Giratina. No, that looks like kind of you both win that matchup. Cress, right? So Cress is a top ranked Pokemon that you pick it up there, that the other one does not. So like the ones that you win, like Buzzhole, Cofagrigus, these are good wins, but they're not top ranked Pokemon. So I think the fact that you're like beating Cress and beating Swampert, and you're still losing to like the other top ones, like Registeel, you're gonna lose no matter what, right? Yeah, but like even the regular loss here, as you're seeing, 316 or 281 is better for the Shadow. So basically what I think is happening in the rankings is it kind of skews your ranking based on the top meta Pokemon, because you're beating Swampert and Crest as a Shadow and you're not losing as hard to like Registeel and probably other top metas. That is why Jellicent, you're doing slightly better there. That is why I think it's skewed to the Shadow, but in the ending, on paper, you actually pick up way more with the non-Shadow. So that's interesting. Like again, I'm just doing this here with you, so that's kind of interesting to see there. Sandslash in Great League, there was a huge difference. I'm assuming it's going to be the same in Master League, and it just comes down to like, I'm not scared of a regular Sandslash's. Again, but that's Great League. Everything has bulk here, so maybe it's going to be different. Yeah, so 2 and 2. So maybe the bulk comes into play here. Basically the same here. In the Great League, and this is where the Shadow is different in the Great League versus the Ultra League. In the Great League, you have just not... You have a few XLs, right? You have a few XLs, but for the most part, you have a lot of non-XL Pokemon. And so a Drill Run from a Shadow A-Slash is scary. Even an Ice Punch from a Shadow A-Slash is doing like 50% on some Pokemon. Whereas opposed to here, everything's XL'd, or everything's legendary, and everything has crazy high stat products. So even from a Shadow A-Slash, you're probably not as scared of a Drill Run as you would be in Great League. And it's not going to do as much of damage per sort of like overall health as you would in the Great League. So I think that's why it's not showing a difference in here, but there is a difference in the Great League. Charizard, I've got to imagine Shadow Charizard is better. Just because of that Blast Burn. Hits so hard on everything as a Shadow. Yeah, 4 more wins as Shadow. Way better overall average. That doesn't surprise me. And it basically comes down to like the Blast Burn hits so hard, even in like resistant matchups as a shadow. But as a non-shadow, it just doesn't have that same oomph, and you don't need to worry about it as much. And that's where you're just seeing that blast burn with shadow bonus just picking up huge there against all these other Pokemon that are losses. Whereas opposed to now, some of these, like you're picking up a few more. Shadow Charizard's a little glassier, and these Pokemon are Umbreon. Even Osteon's pretty tanky. So those like Night Slashes and stuff and foul plays are adding up on the Shadow. But overall, yeah, Shadow Charizard, that does not surprise me that it is ranked way higher. Abomasnow, I haven't even seen a freaking Abomasnow this season. Like let's go over stuff that people actually use. Politoed, people don't really use that. Nidoqueen, we already went over. Again, Shadow Hitmontop. I'll go over Shadow Hitmontop. I don't think there's going to be a ton. Well, the thing is with Shadow Hitmontop is unlike Machamp that I can actually get to charge moves fast, you don't really get to charge moves fast here. So I'm wondering if that shadow damage actually makes a significant difference. 27, 22 versus that, plus the regular has a better. So yeah, that doesn't surprise me, right? Where Shadow Machamp is strong is because it gets to its cross chop so fast, right? So you're really forcing shields quickly with those cross chops and counters. But this one, triple axle, again, I think it's more of a kind of like a fun move as opposed to actually something that changes the meta. And then close combat's like a nuke anyways, so the extra nuke-ish ability doesn't seem to pay off here. So again, it has a 1 higher win, but the average is much better for Hitmontop. So in the end, it's probably just a wash. You can use whatever one you want. Lapis right beside each other there. Let's go Drapion. Because I saw Skunk here. I use a regular, but Drapion is the only other one I really want to look at here. Because I have a rank like 3 or 5 or something regular Drapion, and everyone says, no, don't build it up. You need the Shadow Drapion. And let's just check if that's actually true. On paper, no. What a terrible record on paper, too. It plays way better, and that's the thing. Like, you can't truly do this analysis in the one shield with Drapion, and that's what makes it so tricky. Because Drapion, you will never use this in the one shield. You will use it as a safe swap where... can I do energy advantage here? Let me run this in the multi here with this, because Shadow Drapion, yes, on paper in the one shield sucks. 16 and 23, but you're not using it in the one shield, and you're not using it in the one shield, and you're not using it even energy. You're usually using it in the 2 shield to flip, and you're using it with energy advantage. So let's say you start with 1 poison sting advantage. Your 16 wins goes to 20 wins, and if you have a 2 poison sting advantage, you 21 wins. So not significantly changed in that. Let's go to the 2 shield, because this is where also you would expect it to do much better. So in the 2 shield, is that with 0 energy advantage? Let me just reset this to make sure that I didn't do that wrong. In the 2 shield, oh, 2 versus 1, doy. I was like, that does not seem right. 2 versus 2. That makes more sense. 2 versus 2, 16 and 33, so still not great. But let's give it 1 poison sting. What do we say? It was like 20 and then 21 in the 19 and 24. Whereas the regular Drapion, so still not amazing, 16. So it was 16, 20, and 21. Still 16, even with that poison sting advantage. Interesting. And then 20 in the 2. So it looks like, and then we're gonna, what was it, 16, and then 13. So it's worse in here. So this is actually where it's starting to show how much worse it is. 17. And then it would get to, what, 20, 21? Is that what we said on the other one? So 22. So I think what the problem is with Drapion is, besides having a ton of bad matchups, I think Drapion, I think why the Shadow is better, even though on paper it is not better. Let's just bring this up again just so we can see how it's not better on paper. But I think where it makes a difference is the longer you try to draw out a matchup, that the harder hitting moves from the Shadow, even though they don't like significantly alter a ton of matchups, I think they do enough to flip some matchups and cause you problems or grab shields that you can kind of do it. And then I'm guessing with shield advantage is probably a bigger disparity between the Shadow and that. So let's just do that. Let's just do shield advantage, 1 and 0 here. Yeah, you have 5 more wins as a Shadow in the 1-0, and then in the 2-1, you have 7 more wins. And that's kind of not surprising. So that you have the extra, because you're so spammy as Drapion. That's why you'll never do it in like the even shield. Drapion, if you're using Drapion, you will never use it in an even shield scenario, and you'll never use it in an even energy scenario. And if you do, you're going to lose, realistically, unless you have like a super good matchup. Where you're using it is with potentially shield advantage, grabbing shields, and to do that, you really need to add that pressure as a Shadow. So I think Drapion is one that you probably would want the Shadow advantage there. And then we're already down here in the hundreds, so it doesn't really matter too much. So that is it. So in conclusion, it's sort of showed there's definitely some that are much similar to, that are not so much similar. And I just opened that, sorry. There's definitely some that are similar to Great League, and the fact that like again, the Pokemon with the fast move damage that still have the fast move damage are strong. Counter users, for the most part, counter users, stuff like that, Dragon Breath users. The Registeels, where it does, Regirock does not trade off. Most of these, Swampert, Walrein, and I guess like to say that it does not matter. A Ninetales, even though A Ninetales was ranked super high, sorry, A Sandslash doesn't matter as much, right, as well, because it just doesn't hit, it doesn't have the same threatening ability for the overall damage as the Great League does. A Ninetales was the one that's like, seems to be say go regular. If overall, it seems to go regular instead of the Shadow. Shadow just has better against sort of the top meta, which is why it's skewed a little higher. But that is basically it. So that is the analysis for the Shadow Great League. I said I was going to look at, I'll try, my PC is running low. Okay, I better end this right now then. I said I'll try to look at the top substitutes for XL and Legendary Pokemon. It's going to be tough because there's so many in Great League, but we will try to do that either this week or next week. But that is it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.